This week's episode of Sistas, brought to you by Be-Moor Radio, is a playback. New episodes will resume next week. Please enjoy.
She wears it out because it makes her happy. She's too cool for smooth. Kinks and calls are too free-spirited to be restrained by herbs and oils. These queens who doing it as a natural crown of truth. Braids worn in all sorts of twists, shades, a labor of love.
Please welcome Dr. Eddie. How you feeling, man? What's going on with you?
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi.
Pleasure.
All right. All right.
Dr. Eddie. Dr. Eddie, tell Patrice a little bit about yourself.
Patrice, it's a pleasure to meet you.
You as well.
Of course, I'm Dr. Eddie from Detroit by way of Kingston, Jamaica. I have a doctorate in education, and I work as a college professor. I've been looking to meet that special lady, and we're looking to build something long-term. I'd love to take you out, a little fine dining. What do you say?
I would definitely like that.
What's up, Queens? It's your girl, J. Rose, and welcome to Sistas. And speaking of Queens, it is my pleasure to introduce y'all to a brother who has been helping our queens maintain their crowns with his amazing book series called Dear Queens. He's a nationally recognized speaker, a college professor, a cancer survivor, and might I add, he is pretty good on the eyes, ladies. So, sisters, please welcome one of Detroit's finest, Dr. Eddie Connor. Welcome, Dr. Eddie. How are you?
Wonderful, J. Rose. Glad to be with you on this show. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Glad to have you with us. So I couldn't help but laugh at that Steve Harvey clip. How was it being on the Steve Harvey show?
That was a phenomenal experience. Just to be able to, of course, meet Steve. He is the king of comedy, and to really see him do his thing, even behind the scenes. And then, of course, see it on camera as well. That was phenomenal. And to meet that sister, since we own sisters, and connect with her. She actually, ironically, had read some of my books even before I even knew who she was. So that was awesome to hear that she was a consumer of my reading. So that was cool.
Well, that's always a plus.
Yeah,
when they know
absolutely.
already. Yeah. So it's
Right.
Yeah, so it's definitely a pleasure for us to be able to, chop it up and kind of get to know you a little bit. I did kind of chuckle a little bit on that clip because like everyone was kind of oohing and ahhing. I was like, okay.
That was hilarious.
I said, oh, he must got the sauce. They over here hooting and hollering. Okay.
I'm telling you.
So I hear that you're the author of 14 books in total, correct? And
Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. And so recently you've introduced the second volume of Dear Queens, Volume 2, which premiered this past March. And so I will be honest with you. I've said this before behind the scenes. I read both books in like a 2-day span. And that's how good it was, though. Some of the things I may mention, maybe some themes that are reoccurring in both books. But first, I want to start off by just asking, what even originally inspired you to write a book dedicated to queens?
Yeah, I wrote the first installment of Dear Queen in 2017, and the genesis of it started from my high school. I used to write love letters to girls in school. I was a shy guy, and so I was doing it anonymously and put the letter into a locker. Kept my name off it, and some of the girls found out it was me, and guys kind of got around, heard the word that hey, I'm writing poetry, and they're like, hey man, write me a love letter for Shawty over here, this girl. Keep your name off it still though, and I'll give you some lunch money, or pizza and milk chocolate on Friday. And so it started to be a little bit of a hit, and years later, I said, man, if I could write a love letter to girls, why can't I write a book of love to women, to love themselves, to know their worth? Malcolm X said the most neglected, unprotected, and disrespected woman on the planet is the Black woman. And so I really wanted to just give veracity and value to our sisters, let them know how special they are. And 2022 came around, and or the end of 2021, around that time, I said, "Man, Dear Queen is still one of my biggest books." And I said, "I think there needs to be a second installment." I said, "I don't think there is a it's a end of a conversation. I think it's a continuation." And hey, here we go.
And I like that you put it that way, that it's a continuation, because I always feel like it's always an ongoing conversation as it pertains to
Absolutely.
our queens. And so we definitely thank you, brother, for your dedication to focusing on building up our sisters and seeing the value of who we are and helping us learn self-love and healing and becoming our best selves. And now that I started reading, I admit that I didn't know what to expect, because my initial thought was like, how can a man really understand
Mm.
what sisters need on all these different levels? But it was so much deeper than what I thought. Why do you think it's important from a male perspective to school our sisters on how to respect themselves? And why is it important to teach people, especially men, how to respect them?
Yeah, I think for me, my experience, being raised by a single parent mother, really seeing my grandmother and just watching, women from a bird's eye view throughout my life, up close and personal, even relationships. I just really saw certain things that, you know, when it comes to affection, when it comes to validation and celebration, I think those are a part of the love that our sisters need. And just to continue to uplift them when you seeing sisters who work so hard, raising multiple children, possibly single parent mother, working multiple jobs as well. Just really being a conduit of society. I think we got to celebrate that, and I think we also have to uplift them and let them know how valued they are in our world. And so, just really wanted to do that and allow this to be an olive branch, especially from Black men to our women. Yeah.
And I really like that you bridged that gap, because there's always this conversation about whether sisters are really getting love from the brothers out here. And this is just a perfect example of how, we know that our brothers love us when they take the time to write, like you said, a love letter to all sisters about your
Hmm.
value. And so in Dear Queen, there's a recurring theme of you mentioning that a queen's value doesn't diminish just because of people's inability to see her worth. Could you please
Mm-hmm.
elaborate on why this is vital that our sisters understand what that means?
Yeah, I think loving yourself and knowing your worth is not predicated on other people. I think it first begins with yourself. You can't expect anybody to love you if you don't love yourself. And oftentimes we have to peel past all the layers, take off all the masks that we've been wearing, and really look through the trauma, the triggers, the emotional incarceration, what it is that we have experienced. Yes, forgiving other people, appropriating God's forgiveness in our life, but also forgiving ourselves, for allowing the mistreatment to take place, or not blaming ourselves because of somebody who gaslit us, somebody who made us believe that we are not who we are, being manipulated. And really, a manipulator is always going to make you feel bad for what they did to you. And so, peeling past all those layers, despite the makeup, the lashes, the red bottom heels, hair done, nail done, everything did. Are you fancy, huh? And really loving what you can't see, really, I think, becomes a substratum for the book.
I agree. And then there's always this conversation about whether sisters can be able to have that coexistence with each other, which is another
Hmm.
thing I saw in the book. And I always hear this, and I've been guilty of being that sister that's like, I don't really rock with a whole lot of other female friends, or just having a challenging time working together in harmony amongst other sisters. And so I always wonder, how do you feel about the idea that sisters need to learn to build relationships and collaborate, as you say, instead of competing against each other?
Yeah, we always say you are your brother's keeper, but I think there's also an aphorism which speaks to being your sister's protector. And I think real queens don't compete, they collaborate. Being able to complement, being able to collaborate together, and seeing that we have more in common than we do divided. You know, just because, you're different doesn't mean you're deficient. And I think really being able to look past the veneer and, all that she thinks she all that, and, how sometimes women and men come together. Like, boy, I had this perception of who you were, but when I actually got to know you on a different level, you just like me. And I think when we realize we have more in common than we do divided, we're actually, teamwork is going to make the dream work. We are better together. It becomes a place to where we can not bridge or be divided as a wall, but really create a bridge to come together and work together as well.
That was a really great message as far as how you were able to mention to sisters that we need to be able to learn to collaborate with each other, to really to build those relationships with each other, because I think we need each other more than we think.
Yeah.
So and yeah, and so one of the other recurring things I noticed throughout both books is that the topic of self-love. And I'm sure most sisters, including myself, have struggled with feelings of low self-esteem, valuing the person that we are. What would you say to sisters who struggle with feeling like royalty, in a sense, when it comes to strengthening their own self-esteem?
Hmm. I think it's important to honor your emotions. I also think it is important as well to look at what causes the trigger of what it is to where you feel inadequate. I think oftentimes our inadequacies are idiosyncratic to our circumstances, whether there's a lack of love in the home, whether they're a mother, whether they're father wounds, whether there are individuals who put you down throughout the course of your life. And even when you think about self-esteem, the prefix is self. But isn't it ironic that we allow people to diminish our self-esteem? It's a quote that said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission." And so, being in a place to where you deny permission to other individuals of how they are going to make you feel, no trespassing on who it is that you are, to overcome those traumas, to heal from the vestiges of your past, to love yourself through what you have gone through, and see that, yeah, you took a few L's, but you can bounce back. And if you took any L's at all, it should be lessons, it should be love, it should be leadership, it should be leveraging your purpose. It also should be that you took the Lord with you too. And so, looking at your life in that aspect should now be a place to pause for a cause, to also say, yeah, I've been through some tests, but I have a testimony to where I can now share with somebody else how to overcome what I overcame.
Amen. Amen on that. and I actually like, even in that, it was a section that you wrote, I think it was in the first book, about baggage when it comes to self-esteem. Like, I love that you mentioned my Erykah Badu song Baggage, because I was listening to that song and it really started clicking to me, like, what the bags actually meant. And it just meant all of the things that we were carrying, whether it be bitterness, anger, hurt, regret. And I always was just thinking, as I was reading, like, how can we get rid of that baggage? How can we let that go?
Yeah, I think it's important to sift through our baggage, to actually take the time to unpack it. Um, I believe relationships are like boarding an airplane. Too much baggage is going to cost you. Rather than causing us to soar, it literally is going to cause us to crash into our past. And the fact of the matter is, hurting people hurt people, healed people heal people. If we don't heal, we're going to bleed on people who didn't cut us. And so, really being able to take the time to recognize every one of us has baggage. What is the difference between looking at the difference between what is baggage and what is garbage? There's some things we need to get rid of. There's some things we don't need to recycle, or we don't need to return to. But there are also some things that we can sift through and recognize, all right, this has become emblematic in my life. This can now be used as a place of a testimony, in spite of the scar, in spite of the wound, in spite of the hurt, in spite of the pain. It can be placed to where I can profit from my pain. I can teach, I can mentor, I can empower other individuals. And then also, I can also take some time to engage in self care beyond just a therapeutic massage, actually going to therapy, actually going to a counselor. You know, in the multitude of counselors, there is safety. So being able to talk to individuals about what it is that you have gone through and heal your mind, heal your emotions, and heal the inner wounds of what it is that we have experienced and find wisdom from it.
Amen. And one question before we go to break. I know you mentioned really something really good about the superficial nature of the times that we're living in, as far as social media driven area, where sisters are doing all sorts of different things in order to receive validation from the outside world, whether it be through pictures or likes or comments. Can you briefly just tell us, why is it important that our ladies, our sisters, understand in the age of social media why there is more to who they are than looks and likes?
Yeah, you know, I really believe in what they say, that the average person touches their phone about 2 to 3 thousand times a day. And so we have become so stimulated by the stimuli of our world. And of course, we connect to our world through our senses. But when it moves into a place of sensory overload and that becomes the dominating aspect for our lives, you know, it can be a conundrum. And I think oftentimes, especially as we are receiving the dopamine high from social media, from likes and getting all the attention, I think need to look past the veneer of filters. You know, beyond the filters that we wear on our photos, that we put in our place in our photos. A lot of times we're wearing filters in our own lives. You know, COVID-19, I think it became a precarious pandemic because we didn't just start wearing masks. We've always worn them. You know, it was our notoriety. It was trying to get fame and acclaim. It was the 15 seconds or 15 minutes of fame. Looking at the adoration where it came from others. And oftentimes likes now become greater than love because we lack love internally. And so beyond looking at just the exterior, focusing on the interior, to recognize that our value is not predicated on going viral. Our value is not predicated on being a social media handle or hashtag to become popular, but it's about being powerful. And I think when we recognize our value and we use social media, but we don't allow it to use us, then we have a different perception of our world.
It's a really good way to put it. And I totally agree so much that sisters really need to look for internal validation and spiritual validation first.
Mhm.
And by the way, I definitely want to give you props on mentioning one of my other favorite songs that you mentioned in there. It was a Beyonce song called Pretty Hurts, because
Mm,
it is the definition of what queens need to hear. Because as she says, it's the soul that needs the surgery and not the body. And so with that,
right.
we're going to go to like, right. That was fire right there. So with that, we're going to go to a quick break and we will be right back here with Dr. Eddie on Sisters here at Be-Moor Radio.
As an Olympic athlete, I prepare for everything. So when I became pregnant, I thought I was ready. But at 32 weeks, I was diagnosed with severe preeclampsia and had an emergency C-section. Looking back, had I known the warning signs, I would have talked to my doctor sooner. Too many women die of pregnancy-related complications, and most are preventable. If you or someone you know is pregnant or recently had a baby, learn the warning signs. It could help save her life. Hear her.
Welcome back, Queens, to Sisters right here on Be-Moor Radio, where I am kicking it here with our guest, Dr. Eddie Connor, author of the 2-book series called Dear Queens. Well, Dr. Eddie, we talked a lot about the making of Queens as a whole, but we have not yet heard a whole lot about you and your background. So I'd love for you to please touch on a little bit about your background and kind of how you even got led to writing in the first place.
Yeah, you know, I never had an intention to be a writer at all. It was an interesting journey in my life to where I endured um, the divorce of my parents, and then also going through very ordeal and tough time in my life, being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I was experiencing chest pains as a kid and didn't really know what was going on. Oftentimes, you know, vulnerability and masculinity cannot coexist in the same space. oftentimes that vulnerability is seen as femininity, as a boy becoming a man. And generally seeing pain as weakness leaving the body, don't want to be categorized as weak or soft or any of that nature. And so I kept the pain that I was experiencing inside. Little did I know it was a tumor forming in my chest, wound up being, as the doctor said, NHL, which I thought was National Hockey League. But the doctor said no, it was a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4 cancer. And so going through chemotherapy, radiation, my own father not visiting me one day in the hospital, people who I thought were praying for me, but were literally praying on me, expecting my demise. I had to fight through what I was going through, a praying mama, depending on God's word, leaning on the Lord. I'm blessed to find the can in cancer and make it through that tough time of depression, mental discombobulation, and really be here to walk in destiny.
Well, thank God that you are here. It's so remarkable. I think I don't even remember ever hearing anyone ever coming back from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis, especially at a young age. And just all of those things that even go on with that. And is there any advice that you can share for anyone that may need to overcome, not just physically, but just to overcome mentally as well?
Yeah. I think as I was looking back, and as I've looked back most of the time, throughout my life, I realized God didn't bring you this far to only bring you this far. And a knockdown is not a knockout unless you stay down. As Muhammad Ali said, the canvas is no place for a champion. Big Sean, the rapper, said, last night took an L, but tonight I bounced back. Being able to bounce back from a setback, because a setback is a setup for a comeback. To be able to recoil, to get back up again, to realize that you can't spell don't quit without do it. And has to be the mindset that we have to have in spite of all that was experiencing, all the things that we've experienced and that have taken place. Bouncing back from a setback and getting back up again is what it's about.
And I like that you saw the can in cancer, as you mentioned. And I think it's just really awesome that you were able to still have a positive mental attitude about the situation. It doesn't mean that you still didn't have your moments, but it was really, really refreshing to hear that you actually saw the positive and then how you could be able to overcome. I also am curious to know, and maybe this kind of ties back to the book a little bit. You mentioned something about just because something is quicker doesn't mean that it's longer, because sometimes we have these expectations on where we should be and shouldn't be, or where we should, where we think we are versus where we actually are. And so can you explain a little bit of what that means as far as that?
Yeah, I think life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And being able to run your race at your pace, not allowing you're comparing your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 30. Recognizing, what is for you will take place for you in time. It may not happen as quick as somebody else. But the thing is, if God is blessing your neighbor, that means he's in your neighborhood. It's only a matter of time for what you and I are going to get that will become ours. So I think not comparing, but actually maybe looking at somebody else's life and saying, what can I adopt in my own?
I like that. So if it's a blessing to your neighbor, somebody is in the neighborhood. Hey,
that's right.
Amen. And I really like that. And I also really like the fact that you distinguish the difference in the books about the difference between being a female and being a woman, or being being a queen. And I was kind of stuck for a little bit, but I'm starting to catch it. But what would you say is the difference, in your opinion, between a female and a woman?
Yeah, I think a female is a matter of birth. A woman is a matter of choice. You have to choose to grow up, to mature, to develop. And I think it really speaks to the mentality of what it is that we have experienced. It's maturational development. It is ownership. It is accountability. It is being able to recognize and realize that what I've gone through does not define me, it refines me. I should get better as I get older, and I learn and grow and be stronger. And then also each one teaching one, being able to pass the baton, being able to recognize that nobody is a true success without a successor.
Amazing. And to those who want to be like you in the sense of being a writer, do you have any advice for any aspiring writers, especially writers that maybe come from the inner city like us? Any advice for them?
Yeah, I wrote my first book with $1 and a dream in my name in a college dorm room, begrudgingly. But as I was writing, I was healing. I found therapy from all the things that I had gone through. And I think one thing is just be true to you. Find your authentic voice, find your authentic message. If it hits you first, it's going to hit the other person. And I think being able to open up all the vaults of your emotional wounds and experiences as well, and putting your pain on paper and turning it into power, it will be therapeutic for you, but also a blessing to somebody else.
That's awesome. So before we call it an evening, I always like to ask, are there any new projects, any exciting news that you have in the works going on right now?
Yes, done Dear Queen, as well as Dear Queen 1, Dear Queen Volume 2, and a few other books, especially for our sisters. The first gender-specific book I ever wrote was some years ago called My Brother's Keeper, to our brothers, but I'm revisiting new content again, and got a book called The Mask of Masculinity coming out in June. How men can lead and love with vulnerability. And so that's going to be a real spectacular book coming out in June, Men's Month, and then also we got Father's Day too. So it's on the horizon.
It's awesome. I would be on the lookout for that. I would definitely buy a copy for my husband. Definitely. You got a fan out of me. I'll tell you, definitely.
Oh, cool. Yes. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we got to support each other, especially coming from the D. We definitely have
to. What up, though? 313.
Yes. And so we as sisters, we definitely would like to thank you, Dr. Eddie, for hanging out with us, dropping a few gems on our queens. And we for sure want to give you our stamp of approval. And Dear Queens, which is straight fire and all facts, can be found via Amazon.com or www.dreddieacademy.com/Dear Queens in the paperback as well as the digital version. So thank you so much for your time, Dr. Eddie. We really appreciate you so much. And we love to have you back. Yes.
Awesome. I'd be glad to.
Of course, we love to have you back. So next week, we will be talking to our sisters at Be-Moor Radio. We'll be talking to some of our sister alumni here at Be-Moor Radio. We have a sister by the name of Brenda Walker, who has been taking the film industry by storm right here in Metro Detroit. So stay on the lookout for that. And we will see you next time right here on Sisters, right here at Be-Moor Radio.
She wears a nappy because it makes her happy. She's too cool for smooth. Kinks and calls are too free-spirited to be restrained by herbs and oils. These queens who doing it as a natural crown of truth. Wigs worn in all sorts of twists and shades. A labor of love for the roots expressed by the child of Africa's soil. It's worth the toil. Woolly curls aim for the sheepish, so pick a stance. If you dare to take a glance, her thoughts will ascend you. Trust me, let's give her a chance. A pair of shears for a sheer of locks, a twist to unwind the combination to the safe, where the keys to her heart are best.